Cowboy helped a starving native. Right then, 200 warriors lined up outside his barn. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. It was a cold and quiet morning on the dusty plains of the American West, just as the sun began to rise, casting long shadows over the small, secluded ranch. The winds howled through the dry grass, and the silence of the morning was only broken by the faint sound of hooves approaching. The ranch was isolated, far from the nearest town, and it was the kind of place where one could live in peace, undisturbed. The cowboy who lived there, named Sam, had made his home in the vast emptiness, hoping to escape the hustle of the world, the noise, and the people. He was a quiet man, living alone, his only company the horses and the cattle he tended to every day. He had chosen this life for one reason: to find solace, to get away from the noise of life, to live on his own terms. But that day, things were about to change. As Sam stepped out of his small wooden cabin, stretching his arms to greet the first rays of the sun, he noticed something strange in the distance. A figure was stumbling through the desert dust, his steps unsteady, his clothes torn. The man was a native, one of the many who roamed the vast plains, living off the land as their ancestors had done for generations. The native was clearly in need of help, his face pale from exhaustion, his eyes bloodshot, and his body frail from lack of food and water. Sam hesitated for a moment, unsure if he should get involved. He had heard stories about the tension between settlers and natives in the region, but he could see the man was in no condition to cause trouble. He had no choice but to help. Sam approached him slowly, keeping his hands visible, signaling that he meant no harm. The native, whose name turned out to be Kale, looked up at him with gratitude, but also a hint of fear. Sam offered him water and some bread, which Kale eagerly devoured, his hands shaking from hunger. "Thank you," Kale said in broken English, his voice weak but full of appreciation. Sam nodded, watching him closely, still unsure of what to expect. After a moment, Kale looked at Sam and said, "My tribe, they will not forget your kindness." Sam didn't know what that meant, but he nodded, not wanting to press further. As the native finished his meal and rested for a while, Sam went back to his chores, not thinking much of the encounter. Little did he know, this simple act of kindness would set into motion a chain of events that would change his life forever. Hours passed, and the sun climbed higher in the sky. Sam was in the barn, tending to the horses, when he heard the distant sound of thundering hooves. At first, he thought it was just a herd of cattle, but as the noise grew louder, he knew something was wrong. Sam stepped outside and froze. Coming down the trail toward his ranch was not a herd of cattle, but a small army. 200 warriors, all mounted on horseback. Their faces were painted, their expressions fierce, and their weapons gleaming in the sunlight. The sight of them sent a chill down Sam's spine. He had no idea who they were or what they wanted, but he knew they weren't here for a friendly visit. His first instinct was to run, but then he remembered Kale, the man he had helped earlier. The warriors were headed straight for the barn, and Sam's heart raced. He stood frozen, unsure of what to do. Would they harm him? What was this all about? As the warriors approached, the leader of the group, a tall, imposing man, raised his hand, signaling for the others to stop. The silence that followed was deafening. Sam stood there, caught between fear and confusion, waiting for what would happen next. The leader of the warriors rode forward and dismounted, walking towards Sam. As he drew closer, Sam noticed the leather pouch the man was carrying. It was the same pouch Kale had been clutching earlier. "You helped one of ours," the leader said, his voice deep and commanding. "And for that, we owe you our gratitude." Sam's mind raced as the warrior continued. "We are here to offer you protection and honor. You will never be alone again." Sam was taken aback, unable to comprehend what was happening. The warriors who had once seemed threatening now appeared to be offering him something he never expected: respect and safety in a land where peace was hard to come by. And just like that, the simple act of kindness he had shown to a starving man had turned his life around, bringing a tribe of warriors to his door, not to threaten him, but to stand by his side. The leader of the warriors, a tall and imposing figure, stepped forward, his expression unwavering. He was dressed in a combination of traditional Apache attire and armor that gleamed in the sunlight, his face painted with vibrant colors. Sam, still unsure of what to expect, stood motionless, his heart racing. The warriors around him waited in complete silence, their eyes fixed on him, yet their presence seemed more like a protection than a threat. The leader stopped just a few feet away from Sam and nodded. "We have come to show our respect for your kindness," he said, his voice deep and commanding. "You saved one of our people, and for that, you will never be alone." Sam's mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. He had only helped Kale, a man who had appeared lost and starving. He never expected anything in return, let alone the arrival of 200 warriors. But here they were, surrounding him with an air of authority, waiting for his response. "My name is Takakota," the leader continued, "and I am the chief of this tribe. The boy you helped, Kale, is my son. He has told us what you did for him. We do not take such acts lightly." Sam swallowed hard, his throat dry. He had never met anyone like this before. He had heard stories of the Apache people, of their fierce reputation and their deep connection to the land. But standing in front of them now, he realized there was much more to them than he had ever understood. Takakota extended his hand, offering Sam a small, intricately carved wooden token. "This is a symbol of our gratitude," he said. Sam hesitated for a moment before accepting the token. It was warm in his hand, as if it carried the weight of the tribe's history and honor. "We do not forget those who show mercy," Takakota added. "You have earned our trust." Sam looked at the warriors around him, their faces stoic, yet their posture conveyed a sense of respect. There was no malice in their eyes, only a quiet strength. He could not fathom why they were doing this for him, a simple cowboy with no ties to their world. "You do not need to repay me," Sam said, his voice low and humble. "I only did what anyone would do. I couldn't just leave him there." Takakota nodded solemnly. "That is why we are here. We value honor, loyalty, and respect. You have shown those qualities. And now, we will show you the same." As the words settled in Sam's mind, he felt a weight lift from his chest. He had never expected such a response, but deep down, he knew this moment was significant. It was more than just an exchange of favors. It was a bond being formed, one that would change his life forever. The warriors, once imposing figures of potential danger, now seemed like guardians. They had come not to conquer, but to honor the cowboy who had shown kindness to one of their own. Takakota's voice broke through his thoughts. "We will stay for a while, to ensure your safety and to help you with your work. No harm will come to you as long as we are here." Sam didn't know what to say. He had never been one to ask for help, much less accept it. But as he looked at the men and women around him, their faces filled with sincerity, he realized this was not about him being weak or incapable. It was about something much larger, something greater than himself. It was about the bond of humanity, about helping each other in times of need, no matter the differences between them. Over the next few days, the warriors settled near Sam's ranch. They helped him with tasks he hadn't been able to finish on his own, mending fences, repairing his barn, and even helping with the cattle. It was strange at first, having so many strangers around, but as the days went on, Sam began to see the wisdom in their ways. They were self-sufficient, resilient, and above all, honorable. In return for their help, Sam offered what he could, his knowledge of the land, the ways of the settlers, and the skills he had developed over the years. He taught them how to handle horses, and in turn, they shared stories of their people, of their struggles and triumphs. There was a sense of camaraderie that Sam had never experienced before. As the days passed, Sam realized that what he had done for Kale had created something much bigger than a simple act of kindness. It had brought together two worlds that had long been divided, and it had allowed Sam to find a sense of purpose and connection that he had never known before. He was no longer just a lonely cowboy on a vast stretch of land. He was part of something larger, a community, a family, bound by respect and understanding. And just as Takakota had promised, Sam would never be alone again. Days turned into weeks, and the presence of Takakota's warriors became a familiar sight on the ranch. What had started as a simple act of kindness had transformed into a bond stronger than Sam had ever expected. The warriors, once strangers, were now part of his daily life. Each morning, they would gather around the fire outside Sam's cabin, sharing stories of their travels and their people. Their laughter echoed through the plains, and their camaraderie filled the air with a sense of warmth Sam had never known before. Though he had always been a man of few words, Sam found himself opening up to these people, who had once been considered the enemy. They had not only protected him, but had taught him more about life, respect, and survival in the harshness of the West than he had ever learned on his own. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the land, Takakota approached Sam with a serious expression. He had been quiet for days, and Sam could sense that something important was on his mind. "Sam," Takakota said, his voice steady, "there is trouble on the horizon. A group of men from the south have been moving through the plains. They are not like us. They bring violence and destruction wherever they go." Sam's heart sank. He had lived in isolation long enough to know that trouble was always lurking just around the corner. "What do they want?" Sam asked, his voice low with concern. Takakota's eyes narrowed, his gaze hardening. "They are looking for land to take. They will take it by force if they have to. We have heard rumors of their plans. And we are not the only ones in danger." Sam stood up, his mind racing. He had worked hard to build this life, this place of peace and solitude. He had never wanted to fight, but he knew that sometimes survival meant doing things he never thought he would. "What do we do?" Sam asked. Takakota placed a hand on his shoulder, a gesture of solidarity. "We stand together. We fight if we must, but we do it with honor, like we have always done." Sam nodded. He knew Takakota was right. There was no turning back now. The next few days were filled with preparations. The warriors trained, sharpening their skills with their weapons and making sure their horses were ready. Sam, though inexperienced in battle, did what he could to help. He fortified the barn and the cabin, making sure there were enough supplies to last them for a long siege if necessary. As the days passed, the tension in the air grew heavier. Every sound, every rustle of the wind through the trees, made Sam's heart race. He knew the enemy was out there, watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. Finally, the day came. Sam stood with Takakota and the warriors, watching from a distance as the men from the south approached. They were a rough-looking group, their faces hardened by years of conflict and hardship. They rode in on horseback, their weapons drawn, their eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of resistance. Sam's stomach tightened. He had never been in a situation like this before. His hand instinctively went to the rifle slung across his back, and he steadied himself. "Are you ready?" Takakota asked, his voice calm, almost too calm for the gravity of the situation. Sam nodded, though he didn't feel ready. But what choice did he have? They could not let these men take their land, their homes, their way of life. The battle was fierce and quick. The men from the south were well armed, but they were not prepared for the warriors' speed and precision. Takakota led the charge, his warriors moving with a fluidity and grace that left Sam in awe. Sam, though out of his element, did what he could, taking cover and firing when necessary. As the sun began to set, the battle drew to a close. The men from the south, realizing they were outmatched, turned and fled, leaving behind their weapons and supplies. The warriors did not pursue them. They had made their point. The land was not for the taking. It was theirs to protect. Sam stood there, his heart still pounding, his hands shaking from the adrenaline. He had been a part of something bigger than himself, something that transcended his quiet life on the ranch. He had fought for something worth fighting for. And in that moment, as the warriors celebrated their victory, Sam realized that he was no longer just a lonely cowboy. He was a part of something greater, something that honored respect, loyalty, and the bonds that held them all together. Takakota approached Sam once again, his expression softer now. "You have proven yourself, Sam," he said. "You are one of us now." Sam smiled, though it was a weary smile. "I don't know about that, but I'll stand by you, Takakota. As long as we have each other, we'll keep this land safe." Takakota's eyes twinkled with approval. "That is all I need to hear." And so, Sam's life changed once more. He had started with a simple act of kindness, and it had led him to a place where he found more than just survival. He had found a family, a purpose, and a reason to fight for something greater than himself. The warriors were no longer just protectors of his land. They were his brothers and sisters, bound by the honor of the West, united in the face of any challenge that might come their way. The weeks following the battle were filled with a sense of calm, a calm that Sam had never known before. The warriors had made sure that the Southern men did not return, and with that, the immediate threat had passed. Sam's life, for the first time in a long while, felt secure. He spent his days working alongside Takakota and the others, learning more about the ways of the Apache people and sharing his own knowledge of ranching and survival. The bond between them grew stronger each day, and Sam began to feel a sense of belonging, something he had never expected. When he first helped Kale, one evening, as the sun began to set and the cool breeze of the desert swept through the camp, Takakota called Sam aside. The two of them sat on the porch of Sam's cabin, watching the last rays of the sun dip below the horizon. "Sam," Takakota began, his tone serious, "there is something I must tell you." Sam turned to face him, curiosity piqued. "What is it?" he asked. Takakota's gaze softened, but there was a hint of urgency in his eyes. "The time has come for you to understand more about the bond we share. It is not just about fighting together. It is about protecting something far greater." Sam felt a tightness in his chest. He had heard the stories, the traditions of the Apache people, their deep connection to the land, the spiritual bond they shared with nature. But he had never fully understood the depth of it. "What do you mean?" Sam asked. Takakota stood and looked out toward the mountains, his expression distant as though he was seeing something far beyond the landscape. "When you helped Kale, it was not just an act of kindness. It was the fulfillment of an old promise. A promise made long ago by your ancestors, Sam. Your bloodline is tied to ours in ways that are not yet clear to you." Sam stood up, confusion washing over him. "What do you mean, my bloodline?" Takakota turned to face him, his expression calm but resolute. "You are one of us, Sam. You may not know it, but your ancestors walked this land before your family ever came to these shores. There is a deep connection between your blood and the Apache people. That is why we were drawn to you. That is why Kale found you when he did." Sam's heart raced as the weight of Takakota's words settled over him. He had always thought of himself as just a simple cowboy, a man without ties to anyone or anything. But now, hearing Takakota speak of bloodlines and promises, it felt as though everything he knew about his past was about to change. "But I don't understand," Sam said, his voice shaky. "How can that be possible? I was born a settler. I have no ties to your people." Takakota's gaze softened, and he stepped closer to Sam. "Sometimes, the ties we share are not visible at first. They are not always in the blood that flows through our veins, but in the choices we make, the actions we take. You saved one of our own, and in doing so, you fulfilled a promise made long before you were born. Your role in this world is far greater than you realize, Sam. You are part of something much bigger than yourself." Sam stood there, unable to speak, his mind racing to comprehend what Takakota was saying. He had always thought of his life as simple, his days filled with work and solitude. But now, the idea that he was connected to something so ancient and powerful left him feeling both awed and overwhelmed. "What do I do with this knowledge?" Sam asked finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Takakota smiled, his expression filled with quiet wisdom. "You will find your way, Sam. The path will reveal itself in time. For now, you must continue to live with honor and protect what is important to you. That is all we ask." Sam nodded slowly, still processing Takakota's words. He didn't fully understand it yet, but somehow, he knew this was only the beginning of something far larger than he could have imagined. The days that followed were filled with preparations. Takakota spoke of the challenges that lay ahead, of the enemies they would face and the land they would have to protect. Sam, though hesitant, felt a growing sense of responsibility. He had never been a man to shy away from hard work or difficult decisions. And now, it seemed, he had a greater purpose to fulfill. As the weeks turned into months, the warriors continued to stay with Sam, helping him tend to the land and defend the ranch. Sam, in turn, shared everything he knew with them: how to navigate the harsh terrain, how to raise cattle, and how to build a future in a land that offered little to those who did not know its ways. Their bond grew deeper with each passing day, and Sam began to see himself not as an outsider, but as part of a larger family. He had once been a lonely cowboy, isolated by his past, but now he was a part of something bigger, something that transcended his past and his expectations. One morning, as the sun rose over the mountains, Sam stood at the edge of his ranch, looking out over the land he had come to love. The warriors stood beside him, their presence a silent reminder of the promise he had made to protect this place. It was no longer just his ranch. It was their home now, a place where honor, loyalty, and respect held more weight than any ownership of land ever could. As he looked out over the horizon, Sam realized that the land had changed him. It had given him a purpose, a place in the world that he had never known before. And in that moment, he understood what Takakota had meant. He wasn't just a cowboy anymore. He was a protector, a guardian of something far greater than himself. As the days turned into weeks and the bond between Sam and Takakota's warriors grew stronger, Sam began to understand the depth of his connection to these people. His role as a protector was becoming clearer with each passing day, but there was still much to learn, much to understand. Sam's life, once so simple and solitary, had transformed into something far more complex. The quiet days spent working on the ranch were now filled with a new sense of purpose and responsibility. He was no longer just a cowboy tending to his cattle. He was a part of a larger community, one that stretched back generations. One afternoon, as Sam worked in the barn, Takakota approached him with a solemn expression. "We are preparing for the next phase," Takakota said, his voice calm, but carrying a weight that Sam had come to recognize. Sam wiped the sweat from his brow and nodded, sensing that something important was about to unfold. "What's coming?" Sam asked, his voice steady. Takakota paused, choosing his words carefully. "There are forces beyond this land, men who do not understand the ways of the Apache. They come to claim our land, to take it by force if necessary. We must be ready." Sam felt a chill run down his spine. The southern men they had fought off months ago had been just a small part of a much larger struggle. This was a fight for something much more important than a ranch or land. It was a fight for survival, for the very existence of their way of life. "What do you need me to do?" Sam asked, his voice firm. Takakota looked him in the eye, a sense of pride in his gaze. "Your knowledge of this land, of the settlers, is invaluable. You have lived here longer than any of us. Your skills can help us navigate the challenges ahead." Sam nodded, feeling the weight of the responsibility that was now placed on him. He had never considered himself a soldier, a warrior, but he knew the time had come to stand by his new family, to fight for something greater than himself. Over the next few days, Sam and the warriors trained together. Sam taught them how to track and herd cattle, skills that were critical to surviving in the unforgiving wilderness. In return, Takakota and the other warriors shared their knowledge of survival, of the land, and the ancient ways of the Apache. They taught him how to move silently through the desert, how to read the signs of the land, how to be aware of every movement, every sound. Sam felt himself becoming stronger, more attuned to the land and its rhythms. He had once believed that he was alone in the world, but now he knew that his actions had a ripple effect, that he was part of something much bigger. One evening, as the sun began to set, Takakota gathered everyone together. The warriors stood in a circle, their faces painted, their bodies poised for what was to come. Sam stood with them, his heart pounding in his chest. "The time has come," Takakota said. "Tomorrow, we face our enemies. But remember, we are not fighting for land. We are fighting for something far more precious, our freedom, our way of life." The warriors raised their weapons in unison, a powerful display of strength and unity. Sam felt a surge of emotion, a deep sense of pride in the people he had come to call family. The next morning, before the first light of dawn, they set out. The air was cool, the sky still dark, and Sam's thoughts raced as they rode through the vast, open plains. They moved swiftly, silently, the warriors' horses moving like shadows across the land. Sam, though a stranger to such battles, found himself falling into step with the Apache. He could feel their strength, their connection to the land, their unspoken bond with each other. As they neared the enemy's camp, Takakota signaled for them to halt. The group moved into position, taking cover in the high grass, watching the men who had come to take what was not theirs. Sam's heart raced as he saw the strangers moving about, unaware of the approaching warriors. They were rough-looking men, dressed in the ragged clothes of settlers, their faces hardened by years of struggle. They had no respect for the land, no understanding of the people who had lived there for generations. Takakota's voice was low and steady as he gave the command. The warriors moved as one, a silent, fluid wave of motion. Sam, following their lead, drew his rifle and took aim. The battle was swift, over almost before it began. The warriors, with their skill and precision, overwhelmed the men from the south, forcing them to retreat. Sam felt the tension drain from his body as the dust settled. They had won, but the cost of this victory weighed heavily on him. The land had been defended, but Sam knew this was only one battle in a long, ongoing war. As the warriors gathered around, Takakota turned to Sam, his expression filled with gratitude and respect. "You have proven yourself, Sam," he said. "You are one of us, not just by blood, but by choice. You fought with honor, and for that, we are grateful." Sam nodded, his heart full of emotions he couldn't quite express. He had never imagined that he would find himself in such a place, fighting for a cause that was greater than anything he had ever known. He was no longer just a cowboy. He was a part of something much larger, something that could not be easily broken. As they made their way back to the ranch, the sun setting behind them, Sam felt a deep sense of peace. He had found his place in the world, a place where honor, loyalty, and respect meant more than land or wealth. He was part of a family, a tribe that would stand together no matter what came their way. Weeks passed after the battle, and the peace that followed felt fragile, like the stillness before a storm. Sam had learned much from his time with the warriors, but with every passing day, a gnawing sense of unease grew in his chest. He had fought to protect the land, but the thought of further conflict, of what lay ahead, weighed on him. As the warriors continued to stay with him, the rhythm of life on the ranch began to shift. It was no longer just about surviving day to day. It was about protecting what they had built together. Takakota, who had become like a brother to Sam, spent long hours talking with him about the future. There was much to prepare for, much to defend. One evening, as Sam finished his work in the barn, Takakota called to him from the porch. Sam wiped his brow and walked over to join him. The sky was beginning to turn dark, the first stars starting to appear. "Sam," Takakota said quietly, his voice tinged with concern. "There is word of more men coming from the east. They have heard of our victory, and they are not pleased. They are coming to take what we have, to challenge the peace we have fought for." Sam's stomach tightened at the words. He had known the fight was not over, but hearing it so plainly made the reality of the situation hit him harder. He had hoped, perhaps foolishly, that they would be left alone. But peace, he realized, was always temporary. "How many?" Sam asked, his voice steady despite the rising tension in his chest. Takakota sighed and looked out over the land. "We don't know for sure, but they are organized, well-armed, and they are coming with force." Sam stood silent for a moment, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He had lived on the fringes of society, seeking solitude. But now, he found himself in a position where he could no longer be passive. His choices mattered, and what was at stake was more than his life. It was the life of everything he had come to care about. "What do we do?" Sam asked, his voice resolute. Takakota turned to him, his eyes filled with the quiet wisdom of someone who had seen the world change in ways Sam could not yet understand. "We prepare. We stand together, as we always have. The land will not be taken without a fight." Over the next several days, Sam and the warriors fortified the ranch. They set up lookout points, doubled the patrols around the perimeter, and ensured that every weapon was in good condition. The tension in the air was palpable, and every movement seemed to hold more weight than it had before. As the days passed, the warriors grew more focused, more determined. They had faced danger before, but Sam could see it in their eyes. Their resolve had deepened. They were not just protecting land. They were protecting a way of life, a legacy. The day the men from the east arrived, the atmosphere on the ranch was heavy with anticipation. Sam stood alongside Takakota and the warriors, watching as the first riders appeared on the horizon. The dust kicked up by their horses seemed to cloud the sky, darkening the landscape. Sam could feel his pulse quicken as the riders drew closer, their forms now clearly visible. There were many of them, at least 50, their faces grim and determined. Sam's heart pounded in his chest as he prepared for the worst. Takakota gave a sharp command, and the warriors scattered, taking their positions around the ranch. Sam was left standing at the edge of the barn, rifle in hand, ready to defend the life he had built. The men from the east rode in without hesitation, their eyes scanning the ranch, taking in the well-armed warriors positioned around them. "We've come for the land," their leader called, his voice harsh and demanding. "It belongs to us now." Sam stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "This land is not yours to take. We fight for it, and we will not surrender it to anyone." The leader sneered, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. "You are outnumbered," he spat. "You will lose." Sam held his ground, his eyes locked on the leader. "We will see about that," he said quietly. The battle that followed was fierce, but it was not long before the men from the east realized they had underestimated the strength of Sam and his warriors. The Apache, with their speed and precision, moved like shadows across the land, their weapons swift and deadly. Sam fought alongside them, his rifle steady in his hands, his aim true. The men from the east, though they had the numbers, lacked the discipline and unity that the Apache had. One by one, they began to fall back, retreating in fear as they realized they could not win. The warriors did not pursue them. They had made their point. The land would not be taken. When the dust finally settled, Sam stood at the center of the ranch, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The warriors gathered around him, their faces grim but satisfied. Takakota walked over to Sam, placing a hand on his shoulder. "We have won, Sam," he said, his voice low and filled with respect. "But the fight is never truly over." Sam nodded, his heart heavy with the knowledge that the peace they had fought for was fragile. As he looked around at the warriors who stood beside him, Sam realized that this land was not just his anymore. It belonged to all of them, and he would protect it with everything he had. The weeks following the battle were filled with a quiet tension that Sam had never known before. Although the warriors had driven off the men from the east, a lingering sense of unease hung in the air. Sam had become more than just a cowboy in the eyes of his new family. He had fought beside them, stood with them, and protected what they had built together. But with each passing day, Sam could feel the weight of what was to come. He had been trained in the ways of the Apache, but he knew that the land they were fighting for was more than just dirt and grass. It was home. As the days grew colder, the winds carried whispers of further trouble. A new group was making its way across the plains, ruthless men from the north, said to be better armed and organized than any they had faced before. Takakota had gathered his warriors once more, their faces grim as they prepared for what lay ahead. Sam stood with them, his heart heavy with the thought of what was to come. "This fight will be different," Takakota said quietly, his voice steady as he addressed the warriors. "These men will not leave easily, but we have something they will never understand. We have honor, we have our land, and we have each other." Sam felt the truth of those words in his bones. He was no longer just a man trying to survive. He was a part of something much larger than himself. He was a protector, a guardian of something sacred. The following days were spent preparing for the inevitable. Sam and the warriors spent hours every day practicing, making sure they were ready for whatever the men from the north had in store. Takakota took Sam aside one evening as the sun began to set. The light cast long shadows over the land, and Sam could see the weariness in his friend's eyes. "Sam," Takakota began, "this is not just about survival anymore. This is about the future. Our future. The land we protect is our legacy, and we must defend it at all costs." Sam nodded, his jaw set. He had never been a man of many words, but he understood now that this fight was not just for him. It was for everything that had come before him, and everything that would come after. As the days turned to weeks, the enemy drew closer. Sam could feel the tension in the air, the quiet before the storm. The warriors were ready, and so was Sam. One morning, the sound of hooves echoed across the plains, a distant rumble that sent a chill through Sam's chest. He stood at the edge of the ranch, his rifle in hand, his eyes scanning the horizon. The men from the north had arrived. They were not just a few stragglers. They came in force, hundreds of them, armed with the latest weapons, their faces hardened by years of fighting. Takakota and the warriors gathered, their eyes steely with resolve. Sam stood among them, his heart pounding in his chest. The battle was coming, and it would be unlike anything they had ever faced. As the enemy closed in, Sam could see the smoke rising from the horizon. It was a signal, an omen of what was to come. "Stand firm," Takakota said quietly, his voice carrying a weight that Sam had come to recognize. "We fight for what is ours. For our families. For our future." The warriors took their positions, their movements swift and precise. Sam, though he had never been in a battle like this, knew that this was his fight too. The enemy approached quickly, their horses kicking up the dry earth as they rode toward the ranch. Sam could hear their shouts, their commands, the sound of metal clashing. But the Apache were not afraid. They moved like shadows across the land, swift and silent, ready for the fight. The battle was fierce. The men from the north were well-trained and well-armed, but the Apache fought with a ferocity that was unmatched. Sam, though still learning, found his place among the warriors. His hands were steady, his aim true. He fought not for the land, but for the people who had become his family. Hours passed, and the fight seemed endless. The land trembled beneath the weight of battle, the sound of hooves and gunfire echoing through the air. But slowly, steadily, the tide began to turn. The men from the north, though strong, began to falter. They had underestimated the Apache, underestimated the strength of the bond they shared. As the sun began to set, the last of the invaders turned and fled, retreating into the wilderness. The Apache had won, but it had not come without a cost. Sam stood among them, his body weary, his heart heavy. The land was safe, for now. But Sam knew this was only the beginning. The fight for their future was far from over. Takakota walked over to Sam, his expression solemn but proud. "We have won, Sam," he said. "But there will always be more to fight for." "Always." Sam nodded, understanding the truth in his words. This fight was not over. But with the warriors by his side, Sam knew they would stand strong. Together, they would face whatever came next, and they would protect their home, no matter the cost. The land was quiet once again, but Sam knew it was only temporary. The victory against the men from the north had been hard-won, but the peace that followed was fragile. He could feel it in the air, the weight of uncertainty hanging over him. He had fought for this land, for this family of warriors, and yet he knew the battles were far from over. The land was never truly safe. It was always a matter of time before another threat would appear. As the days passed, Sam's connection to the Apache grew stronger. He had become more than just an ally. He had become one of them. Takakota had treated him as a brother, and the other warriors looked to him as a trusted companion. They had shared their stories, their struggles, and their triumphs, and Sam had learned the true meaning of loyalty, respect, and honor. But even as he grew closer to them, there was a lingering feeling that he was not fully part of their world. He had been raised a settler, and no matter how much he had come to love the Apache, there were still differences between them, differences that could never be erased. One morning, as Sam stood on the edge of his ranch, watching the sun rise over the plains, Takakota approached him. The chief had been quiet for the past few days, lost in thought. Sam could see the lines of worry etched on his face. "Sam," Takakota said, his voice low and serious. "There is more to this land than what we have fought for. We are not the only ones with a claim on it." Sam turned to face him, his brow furrowing. "What do you mean?" Takakota hesitated, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "There are others who wish to take this land from us. Men who would stop at nothing to claim what they believe is theirs. But they do not understand this land, or its people." Sam's heart skipped a beat. He had heard whispers of settlers and landowners who had wanted to claim this territory, but he had never imagined it would come to this. "How do we stop them?" Sam asked, his voice steady but filled with a growing sense of urgency. Takakota looked at him, his eyes full of both wisdom and weariness. "We stand our ground. We fight if we must, but we must also find allies. There are others who believe in the land, in the same values we do. We will need their help." Sam nodded. He had always known that the Apache were a fierce people, but this was different. This was a fight for survival, a fight for their way of life. And Sam was ready to stand with them, no matter the cost. The days that followed were filled with preparations. Takakota and the warriors traveled to nearby tribes, seeking support and forging alliances. Sam worked tirelessly on the ranch, ensuring that everything was ready in case they needed to defend their land. But even as he worked, a deep unease settled in his chest. He could feel the weight of the coming battle, the uncertainty of what it would bring. Then, one evening, as Sam sat by the fire, a rider approached the camp. It was one of the warriors, his face grim as he dismounted. "They are coming," the warrior said. "The settlers. They have gathered in force, and they will be here within days." The news hit Sam like a punch to the gut. He had known this day would come, but the reality of it was more terrifying than he had imagined. The settlers were coming, and they would not stop until they had claimed what they believed was rightfully theirs. The Apache had been fighting for their land for generations, and now Sam found himself caught in the middle of that fight. But this time, it was not just their land at stake. It was his home, his future. As the sun began to set, the warriors gathered around the fire. Takakota stood at the center, his voice steady as he addressed the group. "We have fought for this land before," he said. "We will fight for it again. But we must do so with honor. We will stand together, united as one, and we will protect what is ours." Sam felt the weight of Takakota's words settle over him. This was not just about land. It was about the future, about their people, about everything they had built together. The night was quiet, but Sam knew that tomorrow would bring a new challenge. The settlers would come, and the Apache would have to defend what was rightfully theirs. As Sam lay in his bed that night, he could hear the soft sounds of the warriors preparing for the battle ahead. He had never been a man of war, but he knew that this fight was different. It was not just about survival. It was about the preservation of a way of life, a legacy that had been passed down through generations. Sam closed his eyes, his mind racing with thoughts of the days to come. He had come a long way from the lonely cowboy he had once been. He had found a family in the Apache, and now he would fight for them, just as they had fought for him. The sun would rise again, and with it, a new battle. But Sam was ready. He was no longer just a man on a ranch. He was a protector, a warrior, and he would stand with the Apache until the very end. The day of the battle arrived. Sam stood at the edge of the ranch, his heart heavy with the knowledge of what was to come. The settlers from the north had gathered, and with them, they brought not just weapons but the intention to take what was not theirs. Sam had never imagined that his life would lead to this moment, standing on the front lines of a fight to protect the land he had come to love as his own. As he looked across the plains, the warriors gathered around him, ready for the fight ahead. Takakota, as always, was calm and resolute, his eyes focused on the approaching enemy. Sam could see the determination in his eyes. These people had fought for their land for generations. Now, it was Sam's turn to stand with them. The air was thick with tension as the warriors prepared themselves. The sound of horses stamping and weapons clinking filled the silence. But there was no fear in the air, just the steady beat of resolve. Sam, despite his own nerves, knew he could not afford to show weakness. This was a fight for everything they had built. "Remember," Takakota said to the group, his voice firm, "this is not just about land. It is about our people, our future. We fight with honor, and we fight together." Sam nodded. It was a simple truth, but one that carried all the weight of their shared struggle. The men from the north were coming. They were not just looking to take land. They were looking to erase the Apache, to take what had been rightfully theirs for centuries. Sam understood that this fight would determine more than just the fate of his ranch. It would shape the future of the Apache people. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, the warriors mounted their horses and moved into position. Sam was with them, rifle in hand, his mind focused. He had spent years on this land, and now he was ready to defend it with everything he had. The enemy arrived in force, their horses kicking up dust as they moved toward the ranch. They were organized, their weapons gleaming in the sunlight. Sam could see the hard faces of the settlers, their eyes filled with greed and determination. But the Apache were ready. They had the land on their side, and more importantly, they had each other. The battle began with a roar, the sound of gunfire and the pounding of hooves reverberating through the air. Sam moved with the warriors, his body reacting on instinct as they fought to protect what was theirs. Takakota led the charge, his warriors moving as one, swift and precise. Sam, though still new to the chaos of battle, fought with a resolve he hadn't known he had. The settlers, though fierce, were no match for the Apache's speed and agility. Slowly, the tide of the battle turned. The men from the north began to retreat, realizing they were outmatched. But even as they faltered, they fought with desperation, knowing that they had come to take something they would not give up easily. The battle raged for hours, But as the sun climbed higher in the sky, it became clear that the Apache had won. The settlers, seeing the futility of their position, began to flee. Some were captured, while others escaped into the wilderness, their pride broken. Sam stood in the midst of the battlefield, his rifle still in hand, his breath coming in heavy gasps. He looked around at the warriors, who were now gathering their fallen and tending to the wounded. The battle had been hard, but they had succeeded. The land was safe, for now. Takakota approached Sam, his expression filled with pride and gratitude. "You fought well, Sam," he said, his voice filled with respect. "You are truly one of us now." Sam nodded, his heart heavy with the realization that this fight, like all battles, had its cost. There were those who would never return home, and those who would carry the scars of this day for the rest of their lives. But the land was theirs. They had defended it, and in doing so, they had protected the future of their people. As the warriors gathered together, Sam stood with them, his mind reflecting on everything that had led to this moment. He had started as a man seeking solitude, a cowboy living on the fringes of the world. But now, he was part of something much larger. He was part of a family, a tribe, and he had fought for them, just as they had fought for him. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the land, and Sam could feel a sense of peace settle over him. The battles would continue, but for now, they had won. They had fought with honor, and they had protected their future. Sam, the cowboy who had once been alone, now stood with his new family, united by the land they had fought to protect. The fight was never truly over, but with each victory, with each act of loyalty and bravery, they were building a future that could not be erased. Sam had found his place in the world, and he knew that no matter what came next, he would always fight for this land, for these people, and for the future they would share together.